All right, hey guys, we're here midday on January 30th, last day of the month. And with this, I'm a little behind schedule today, but this is the second coin that was voted upon for members to review today, or the second spread, I should say. So this is Ethereum to Bitcoin. I'm on GDAX here. Now, okay, so this has been just a monster trade, right? So, I mean, just amazing. And what's encouraging about seeing this is that this is in Ethereum withstanding the drawdown that's been happening, or the correction, if you will, in Bitcoin. And that has not often been the case. What we saw often in 2017, let me put it that way, is that the weight of Bitcoin would pull everything down with it. So if Bitcoin went down, Ethereum went with it, Litecoin went with it. And it's kind of nice to see this, where we have Bitcoin doing what it's been doing in the midst of its pretty substantial correction, yet Ethereum spread against it, moving here to all-time highs. It's really more what logically, if you think about it, you would be expecting, right? If Bitcoin's going down, what you're spreading it against should be going up. So it's nice to see a little bit more of what we would normally expect, right? Or so if you're thinking about, what's going on with the Fed, and you're thinking about the dollar compared to the yen or the euro, so your choice is, well, I can short the dollar index, or I could, buy the yen, or I could, buy the euro relative to the yen. So it's nice to see these relationships starting to sort themselves out. So, this is in effect a proxy of sorts to shorting Bitcoin. So here we sit now. All right. So we've got a lot of very, very significant swings here now. So we can look at here now, of course, clearly with all the benefit of hindsight. Working from our absolute low here, we can get a pretty clear count on this. So we get the 1, 2, all the way up to the big 3. Here's the 4. Now we've got the targets up here, but so that, really as we dial in over here, we're going to get to, could we be topping out here? And I'm not one for calling tops. I think that's a bit of a fool's errand. But I will say that we may be at a point where you might want to be less aggressive in buying it. How about that? I certainly wouldn't suggest shorting it here. I mean, this is a remarkably strong trend. Just a consistent series of higher highs, higher lows. Just what defines a trend. And it's been technical. Now, I've got a shift pitchfork, which seems to have contained, look at it, how it's hugged the median line all the way, and here just like a snake kind of wrapping around it, which you'll often see. So I've got the 3 labeled here, and there could be some, 2 Elliotians might give you 2 counts there, but it really doesn't matter, because here's the 4. We can, whether that's the 3 and we get an A, B, C or not, we can be pretty clear that we get a good 4 here. And I remember when we were looking at this, we were trying to buy a tap of the median line, and we didn't get it, and took off here. So as we look at this now, the potential is certainly there for this to complete a 5-wave structure. So why would that matter to us? Now, take note, I am in log scale here, so we can see the definition a little bit better. So if, just for the sake of the conversation, let's say we were going to top here. Let's we'll put it here on the median line just for the example. So if we were to top here, all we're going to do, just like we would with any second wave, just like we did here, here, and here, we're going to pull from the low. We're going to pull from the beginning of it here all the way up, if this is our high here, just for the sake of the hypothetical. So where's our next entry? All right, again, take note, I'm in log scale. So it's going to look a little distorted. You get compression up at the top. So here's your buy zone. Right here, right? So there's the 50 to the 618, and of course you would want to front run a little bit on the 50. So, again, I'm not calling a top. I'm not suggesting that that we're approaching a top. What I'm saying is the potential is there for this, as an Elliott trader, to look at this and say we could very well be completing the 5th of the 5th, and then it's just sit and you got to hurry up and wait for the second. If you're an Elliott trader, that's what you're going to do. If you want to try and trade it, if you want to discard the Elliott and just say, well, I'm going to trade what the algos are going to do, and I'm going to wait from swing low to swing high, I'm going to buy the 50. Yeah, now sure, I'm on a 1-hour chart here, and there's lots of little swing trades that can be done in between. But from the largest view of this market, here's your next trade. All right, what is that? 72, 79 stats. So. Not something I can tell you is tradable right now, but that's something I would certainly have this, if you're not in, and you want to get in, this is something that I would certainly have somewhere, and I would have some alarms on this if it starts coming down. So let's dig in over here and see if there's anything we can learn to evaluate where we might see potential turns. So working off this is our 4 low. Going back, there we go. Working off this as a 4 low. There's the 1, 2. Well, now you say, well, how is it? How are you picking? What makes you think that that's the third there? Well, same thing I would do with any coin. I'm just going to measure it, or so I'm going to use the statistical probabilities based on what I know about wave patterns, and I know that the 1618 is the highest probability for, pardon me, wrong tool, for a wave 3 relative to the length of wave 1. Right? So I can just be as simple as that. Where's the most likely zone statistically? So if I measure from the length of the 1 projected from the 2, what do we do here? There we get right on that 2 low. Okay, so right to the tick. We know this is the most likely zone for a third, and when does it tick it? At the median line. So, I'm fairly confident calling that a 3. Now, we get a very, very shallow 4, right, relative to the 2. So, I mean, it can happen in a strong market. That's not unheard of. So if we measure it, we look at this as our 4, fairly good evidence to support the 3. So now we look and say, okay, well, I'm going to go from my 2 to my 3 high. Well, that's extremely, extremely shallow. That we might even have gotten the 14 there. So, again, a high probability zone between the 23 and the 38 for a fourth in a strong market. We don't even get there. So, very strong market. So what does that mean for us? Well, you got to allow for that as the fourth relative to this price action, because upon moving off of that, it would appear that we then again get a 1-2. So let's look at that. See if we can draw any conclusions from that. So if this is with a very, very shallow fourth, but we do get a little A, B, C, we get the pattern that we might look for. Well, then what if that's going to be the 4, and with this movement off of it, potentially a 1-2. So let's just measure it and see what we get. So if that's going to be our 1, we know that the 2 can go anywhere from the 50 to the 786. Well, we get this little spike down here. We get through the 6.5. 786 holds it, and now we're moving away. So here's the first algo target. Right. Second, we know that the negative 100 is going to be very close to the 1618. So if I label look at it this way and go 1, 2, potentially we don't know that that's done yet. We'll go here. Let's go to we'll go to white so we can see a little better. Okay, so potentially, that we're going to have to slide it over a little bit because you've got some time factor contributing to this. So reasonable to look at that and say, okay, well, here was the peak in the oscillator. That was the big 3, and now here relative to this, if this is my 1, oscillator is now moved to new high here. So potentially I'm putting in the third. So I would do the same thing. I would measure that, take the length of the 1 projected from the 2. Well, there's the 100, right? So we know that that's likely to be very close. So here's that little pocket up here, potentially for my wave 3 zone. There's the median line, so it's going to have to get there in a hurry, right? If it's going to get there in the next couple of hours. So if it doesn't get there, we don't invalidate the scenario for a third. It just, well, you might put a pitchfork just on these pivots, right? And look at that. So this is the median line from the absolute swing low to the first 1-2. So I might look at that. I'd have to go to original. Now that looks kind of interesting. So if this would be just amazing to catch that. So you'd get this confluence zone here. So if this is just going to keep crawling higher, you've got a nice big confluence zone here where you'd have the median line from this pitchfork. So the lower parallel here. Look how straight up this is. Could you get that? Well, that would certainly set up technically. So where's the next trade if you're looking for a little swing trade? Let me get rid of that. So next little swing trade, looking for that potential top here. Well, you're going to have to wait till you get a 3 and look for the 4. Now, we may top here. There's 1272. That's, it's square root of 1618. That's, you often will see that, right? So we've gone through the 100, so we know that it's a third. but it still might have a little bit more juice in it to get up to that, to get up to this high probability zone. If we get there, or if we roll over now, either way, the next trade, if you're looking to get long, if you're willing to take a smaller position here, knowing that you're in the fifth of the fifth of the fifth, would be to look for. Let me take some of this off because I know the chart gets hard to read. So if I take all of that stuff off, now we'd look at it here and say, okay, well, if that's my 2 and there's a 3 going in somewhere up here, I got to wait till I get some retracement started to really be confident in topping out here. But at least I've gone more than 100% of the wave 1. So if it's going to be here, if it's here, just for the sake of this example here, if it were to be here, well, then I'm just looking for that. So if this ends up topping here, then I'm looking for the 4 down here. I've got a little geometry here. That would be well, here's the 100. This would be the 200 right at the 38. So am I going to get an impulse wave here? Am I going to get a diagonal? Well, I'm going to wick off the wave 1 high. So I have a baseline here to know that that's likely to be at least some structural support, prior resistance offering some support right at the 38. That sets up nicely. So maybe I end up going like this. So I would get, again, hypothetical. We're back here to push up for the 5th to get to the median line. Right, you've got 2 median lines. You've got this one, and then you've got the very, very long-term one. Look how it tagged it right here. It's amazing. So potentially here, it's the 5th of the 5th of the 5th. Right, so if I pull this all the way back out, then you get some perspective excuse me, on where we've been. If I can get it to do it for me. Right, you get a handle on where we are and where we've come from. That's a long way to go. Trading views. Having a hard time processing it. There we go. So you can see from this low down here, at some point up here, we're putting in the 5th of the 5th of the 5th. So we've got this here. So here's the 30. Well, let's see. So where am I? So I'm pulling from, this is our high here. So I would look at it this way. Trading views. I've got probably just too many charts open. So I would look here, and I'd have to pull this here where we had that right at the 23. So we're getting mighty close to that first algo target here. And then here's the 618 as another target. So at some point up here we're gonna top. We're likely to top. So here's the negative 23 lining up in just off of that wave 4 that I just showed you. So here's the first one. So you've got a pretty substantial zone up here, a target for that 5th. To be conscious of, right? So there, that whole, I would, just mark that whole area, saying, well, that's the algo target. Could we get there? Well, that's a long way to go. A long way to go relative to this scale here. So that means an extension in the 5th. It's possible. It's possible. We just, don't know. Could be. This is just going to continue to move. So for all we know, we're just putting in the 1 wave of the 5th wave. So that's why trying to call a top is, again, a fool's errand. So do I have the potential for this to keep going? Of course. Absolutely. Nothing says that this has to top here just because we've got a 5 wave. This could be the 1 wave of that 5th wave, and this could just keep rolling. Right? So don't take away from this that I'm saying we're nearing the absolute top of this trade, of this spread. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the potential is there, certainly, relative to where we've been, but this could just be the start of another leg. So we'll see. If we get an impulsive 1 here, we will trade the 2. So as I've said many times, you trade it until it fails. So if we get a 1 wave here, if we complete this in a 5 wave sequence, is your first thought, well, that's the 5th of the 5th of the 5th? Maybe. Right? How are you going to know? Well, you're not going to know until you see the first reaction at the 50. Do we break the 618? Do we start to get into a major correction? Does a major correction start here? And then we know from when I looked at it before that we have that 50 down below, and we're looking for something like that to take us back down to that target here. Here was the 50. Right? That would be the next long-term buy if we see something like that. Right? Just taking whatever the top is, and we don't know where it is. But if we start to do that, we know where the next long-term buy is right here at the 50. Right? Swing low to swing high. Okay, guys, wrap it there.